Hello, and welcome back to the Sleep Alchemist. Tonight, our journey takes us to a bygone era of impossible wealth and quiet desperation, a time of grand mansions on a windswept coast, where the most dangerous secrets were not spoken, but worn as perfume. Before we begin our journey, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely find a sense of peace here. And in the comments, I would love to know where in the world you are listening from tonight. It's always a quiet joy to see our community of listeners gathering from all corners of the globe. Now dim the lights, find your comfortable space and let your breath slow to the rhythm of the night. Our story begins with the scent of sea salt and old money in the opulent world of Gilded Age Newport. The journey from our small, scent-filled workshop in New York to the shores of Newport, Rhode Island, was like traveling between worlds. We left behind a world of familiar, intimate smells, the sweet, almond-like scent of tonka bean, the earthy depth of oak moss, the sharp, bright promise of bergamot. We left our small, quiet world of glass bottles and precise measurements, and we traveled towards a world that smelled only of two things: old money and the sea. I am an apprentice, a student of the most sublime and invisible art form, perfumery. My master, Antoine de la Vigne, is one of the last true noses of the old world. A man who can smell not just a flower, but the soil it grew in, the time of day it was picked, and the memory of the person who might wear its essence. And we had been summoned, a commission of a magnitude we had never known before. As the train pulled into the station, the air changed. The city's scent of coal and industry was replaced by a clean, sharp, salty tang that promised vast, open spaces. Our client, one of the great industrial titans of the Gilded Age, had sent a carriage. It was a magnificent thing of polished black lacquer and deep velvet seats, drawn by two perfectly matched grey horses. As we rode, the simple wooden houses gave way to something else entirely. They called them cottages, but they were not cottages. They were palaces. Great, sprawling mansions of marble and stone, set upon lawns, so green and so perfect, they looked like carpets of emerald. They stood like proud, cold monuments to impossible wealth, their turrets and towers reaching for a sky that seemed, in comparison, quite humble. We were entering the summer playground of the American gods. Our destination was the grandest of them all, a behemoth of pale white marble called the Breakers, the summer home of Mr. Alistair Harrington. It did not look like a home. It looked like a declaration of war against subtlety. The carriage stopped, and a footman in perfect livery opened the door. We were led into the great hall. The silence was the first thing I noticed. It was a silence so profound, so heavy, it felt as if it absorbed all sound. Our footsteps, which had echoed on the cobblestones outside, were now swallowed by a thick, priceless Persian rug. The air smelled of beeswax, of salt from the nearby ocean, and of something else, the cold, metallic scent of power. We were led, not to a comfortable drawing room, but to a dark, wood-paneled study that felt like the heart of a great, dark ship. And there, behind a desk as large as my entire bedroom in New York, sat Mr. Harrington. He was not a large man, but he radiated an energy that seemed to consume all the oxygen in the room. He had a neatly trimmed beard and eyes the color of steel. He did not rise to greet us. He simply gestured to the 2 chairs before his desk. "Master de la Vigne," he said, his voice a low, confident rumble. "I trust your journey was satisfactory." "It was, thank you, Mr. Harrington," my master replied, his own voice calm and steady. A small, quiet island in the ocean of this man's presence. "Good," Mr. Harrington said, getting straight to the point. "Let us discuss the commission. I have brought you here for a single purpose. I require a perfume for my wife, Genevieve. It is to be a wedding anniversary gift, but I do not want one of your existing creations. I want a scent that is hers and hers alone. A scent that, when she enters a room, announces her as Mrs. Alistair Harrington. It must be unique, unforgettable. It must be a scent of status." He paused, leaning forward. "I want it to smell of 2 things, power and innocence. The power of my name and the perfect untouched innocence of my wife. I want other women to envy it and other men to despair. Do you understand?" Master Antoine was silent for a long moment. He looked at the great, powerful man behind the desk. "Sir," he said finally, his voice soft but firm, "a perfume is not a declaration of ownership. It is a confession of the soul. To create a true scent for your wife, I must understand not her status, but her essence." Mr. Harrington frowned, clearly unaccustomed to being contradicted. "Her essence is that she is my wife." "With respect," my master continued, his calm unwavering, "that is her role. I need to understand the woman herself, her memories, her quiet joys, the scents that make her feel at peace." A tense silence fell over the room. I held my breath. But my master, Antoine, had one condition for accepting any commission for a bespoke perfume. He had to have a series of private consultations with the person who would wear it. "I will need to speak with Mrs. Harrington," he said. "Alone." I saw a flicker of irritation in Mr. Harrington's steel grey eyes. The thought of another man, even an old perfumer, having a private audience with his young wife clearly displeased him. But his desire for the ultimate status symbol, a perfume that no one else in the world possessed, was stronger than his possessiveness. "Very well," he conceded, his voice tight. "You shall have your consultations, but I expect a masterpiece, de la Vigne, nothing less." Later that afternoon, we were led to a different part of the house. A bright, airy solarium, a beautiful cage of glass and white iron, filled with ferns and exotic hothouse flowers. And there, sitting alone in a wicker chair, reading a book, was Genevieve Harrington. If her husband was a creature of iron and power, she was one of silk and quiet sorrow. She was younger than I had expected, with pale skin and hair the color of dark honey. She was dressed in a simple but exquisitely made white lace dress. She was, by any measure, one of the most beautiful women I had ever seen. But it was a fragile, remote beauty. Her smile, as she greeted us, did not reach her eyes. Her eyes, a deep, startling blue, seemed to be looking at a distant horizon that only she could see. She was polite, her voice a soft, cultured whisper, but she was distant, a beautiful, perfect doll, placed elegantly in her dollhouse. As my master began to speak with her, I felt a profound sense of pity. Mr. Harrington did not want a perfume that captured her soul. He wanted one that would complete his collection. Master Antoine, however, was a patient man. He did not ask her about her favorite flowers or perfumes. His questions were gentler, more unexpected. "Tell me, Mrs. Harrington," he began, his voice soft as to not startle a fawn. "What is the first scent you can remember from your childhood?" She looked surprised, her carefully constructed composure faltering for just a moment, and in that small, almost imperceptible crack in her porcelain facade, I saw the first glimpse of the real woman within, a woman whose story, I now realized, was the true commission. Our task was not to create a perfume for her husband, but to create a secret garden of scent that she and she alone could retreat to. The work was about to begin. Our consultations with Mrs. Harrington did not take place in the cold, formal rooms of the great house. At my master's request, we met in her private sanctuary, the grand conservatory at the back of the estate. It was a world unto itself, a cathedral of glass and white iron, filled with the warm, humid air of a perpetual summer. Here, amidst the giant ferns and exotic, vibrant orchids, the oppressive silence of the manor was replaced by the gentle hum of life. For our first session, Master Antoine did not bring his usual leather case filled with hundreds of tiny vials of essential oils. He brought only a small, empty notebook and a charcoal pencil. I was there as his assistant to take my own notes, but I understood my true purpose was to be a silent witness, to observe the subtle reactions that my master, with his focus on scent, might miss. Genevieve Harrington was waiting for us, sitting on a simple iron bench near a waterfall of purple orchids. She was wearing a different white dress today, simpler, less formal, but the same profound, distant sadness remained in her eyes. My master did not begin with the usual questions a perfumer might ask. He did not ask if she preferred floral or woody scents, light or heavy perfumes. His approach was always different. He was not interested in what a person thought they liked. He was interested in the scents that were already written into the unseen pages of their soul. He sat on the bench opposite her, leaving a respectful distance between them. "Mrs. Harrington," he began, his voice a soft, gentle baritone. "We are not here to choose a scent. We are here to listen for one. So, I will not ask you what you like. I will ask you what you remember. Tell me, if you would, of a scent from your life that, when you imagine it, makes you feel completely free." The question hung in the warm, humid air between them. I saw a flicker of surprise in her eyes. This was clearly not what she had expected. She was used to being treated as an object, an ornament to be decorated. She was not used to being asked about her feelings, her inner world. She was silent for a long time. She looked past us, through the glass walls of the conservatory, towards the distant grey line of the sea. "Freedom," she whispered, the words sounding foreign on her lips. She closed her eyes. A small, almost imperceptible frown formed between her brows as she searched her own memory. "There was a garden," she began, her voice gaining a little more strength. "Not a grand garden like this one. A small, messy vegetable patch behind a simple farmhouse. I was a child. the air after a spring rain. Do you know that smell, Master de la Vigne? I know it well, he said quietly. It is called petrichor, the scent of the earth breathing. Yes, she said, a faint, genuine smile touching her lips for the first time. It smelled of that, and it smelled of the sharp, green scent of my mother's tomato plants. When you would brush against a leaf, it would leave a bitter, wild perfume on your hands. And in the spring, the apple blossoms, a whole orchard of them. The wind would carry the scent for miles. It was a sweet, airy fragrance, full of the promise that the world was new, that anything was possible. As she spoke, I watched my master. He was not just writing down the words, rain, tomato leaf, apple blossom. He was writing down other words in his charcoal pencil. I saw him write, freedom, ix damp earth, petrichor, and then youth, sharp, green notes, and finally, hope, wild apple blossom. He was not a perfumer, he was a translator, turning the language of memory into the language of scent. The first consultation ended there. It was a gentle beginning. A single, small window had been opened. A few days later, we met again in the same place. The trust between them had grown. The air was less formal. Master Antoine went deeper. Today, Mrs. Harrington, he said, his voice still gentle, I must ask a more difficult question. A scent can hold joy, but it can also hold sorrow. The most powerful scents often hold both at once. Tell me, if you can, of a scent that is both the most beautiful you have ever known and the most painful to remember. I saw her flinch. It was a tiny, almost invisible movement, but I saw it. She clutched her hands in her lap. The question had struck a nerve. She stared into a pot of brilliant red hibiscus, her face a pale, beautiful mask. I thought she would not answer, that the session was over. But then she took a deep, shuddering breath and began to speak, her voice low and steady, as if she were reciting a story she had told herself 1,000 times in the silence of the night. Before I was married, she began, her eyes still fixed on the flower. There was a summer, a single summer, I spent by the sea in a small fishing village. I was meant to be a companion to my aunt, but I met a man. She paused. My master did not rush her. He simply waited, his pencil poised above his notebook, his attention absolute. He was an artist, she continued, a painter. His studio was a small, chaotic room above a boathouse. It always had a particular smell. A smell that I thought at first was harsh, but which I came to see as the most beautiful scent in the world. What was it? Master Antoine asked softly. It was the smell of his work, she said, a nostalgic sadness in her voice. The sharp, clean, almost painful smell of turpentine and linseed oil. It was not a perfume. It was the scent of creation, of possibility, of a life so different from my own. She looked up then, her eyes meeting mine for a fraction of a second, and in them I saw the ghost of that long ago summer. And the sea, she went on. His studio had a large window that was always open, and the constant, briny, sharp scent of the salt sea breeze would fill the room. It mixed with the smell of the turpentine. That smell, that is the smell of him. And there was one more, she said, a single tear now tracing a slow path down her cheek. She did not seem to notice it. The strong, bitter scent of the black coffee he would brew in a small pot on a tiny stove while he worked through the night. He would make me a cup too. It was too strong for me, but I would drink it anyway. She stopped speaking. The silence in the greenhouse was profound, broken only by the buzz of a single, trapped bee against a glass pane. She had not described the man. She had not described his face, his voice, their conversations. She had not described a single touch or a single kiss. But she had painted a portrait of their love affair more vivid, more intimate, more heartbreakingly real than any I could have imagined. It was a love story told entirely in scent: turpentine, sea salt, and bitter coffee, the perfume of a lost world. Master Antoine did not offer her a handkerchief. He did not offer empty words of comfort. He simply sat there, a silent witness to her confession. After a long moment, he slowly closed his notebook. "Thank you, Mrs. Harrington," he said, his voice full of a profound respect. I believe I have everything I need now." As we walked back to our rooms, I knew, with absolute certainty, that the commission had changed. We were no longer creating a perfume to please a rich man. We were no longer creating a symbol of status. We were creating a secret, a bottled memory, a quiet, defiant act of rebellion designed to be worn on the skin. A perfume that would allow a woman in a gilded cage to close her eyes and for a fleeting, precious moment return to a small, messy studio by the sea. Our work began the very next day. A small drawing room overlooking the sea had been converted into a temporary laboratory for us. It was a strange sight, this fusion of two worlds. The room's delicate silk wallpaper and ornate furniture now shared space with Master Antoine's tools of the trade. Rows upon rows of small, dark amber bottles, each containing a precious essence from some corner of the world. There were glass beakers, delicate pipettes, a small, precise brass scale, and hundreds of pristine white paper blotters ready to receive the trial scents. The air, which should have smelled of sea salt and privilege, now smelled of potential. It was the scent of creation. I watched my master, and he was a man transformed. The quiet, empathetic listener from the conservatory was gone. In his place was the alchemist. His eyes, which had been soft with understanding, were now sharp with an intense, unwavering focus. He moved with a quiet, economical grace, his hands selecting bottles, measuring drops, his mind clearly working in a world far beyond this room. Our first task, he explained, was to create the perfume that Mr. Harrington had actually asked for. The shell, as he called it in a low voice to me, the scent of power and innocence. "A perfumer, my dear apprentice," he said, his eyes glinting, "is sometimes a portrait painter and sometimes a forger. Today, we shall be forgers." He began to work, and I watched, mesmerized. He did not reach for the familiar, comforting notes. He reached for the bold, the declarative, the expensive. He started with aldehydes, a modern marvel of chemistry that gave scents a brilliant, almost blinding sparkle, a scent that screamed new and costly. Then he constructed the heart. He chose the most regal, most commanding of white florals, not the gentle apple blossom of Genevieve's memory, but the loud, proud, almost narcotic scent of tuberose. He paired it with the cool, aloof beauty of iris, using not the flower, but the root. Orris butter, a substance worth more than its weight in gold, smelling of cold earth and powdered violets. I watched him weigh a tiny amount of the pale, waxy orris butter on his brass scale. This, he murmured, more to himself than to me, is the scent of wealth. It does not whisper, it announces. He worked with the precision of a mathematician, following the strict classical rules of perfumery. The result, after hours of careful blending and balancing, was a perfume that was technically brilliant. I dipped a paper blotter into the trial liquid and brought it to my nose. It was magnificent. It smelled of a grand ballroom, of diamond necklaces, of cold champagne. It was the scent of a queen. It was beautiful, flawless, and as cold and as hard as the marble floors in the great hall of the manor. It was a perfect lie. It held none of her true story. When that work was done, Master Antoine carefully set the beaker aside. He cleaned his tools. He took a deep breath, as if cleansing his own palate, his own soul. And then the real work began. Now, he said, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper, we will craft the heart. We will bottle the memory. He pushed aside the expensive, regal essences. In their place, he brought out a different collection of small, strange bottles. These were not the scents of a perfumer's organ. They were the scents of a life. He began to build the scent of her lost love's studio, to capture the sharp, chemical scent of turpentine. He did not use turpentine. He used the green, biting resin of galbanum and the sharp, clean scent of pine needle absolute. To mimic the smell of linseed oil, he used a touch of nutty, hay-like absolute of fluve. I watched, astonished, as he blended these disparate, difficult scents into something that was not harsh, but clean, energetic, and full of a strange, artistic hope. Then he created the sea. He used a tiny, precious drop of seaweed absolute, smelling of salt and dark, mysterious depths. He blended it with the musky, ethereal scent of ambretta seed, which smells of warm, clean skin. He created not just the smell of the ocean, but the feeling of a sea breeze on a warm day. And finally, the coffee. He had a small, dark, thick, absolute of roasted coffee bean. He added a single drop, and suddenly the entire composition was grounded in a scent that was not perfume, but reality. A scent of late nights, of shared warmth, of simple human comfort. I was helping him weigh out a different ingredient, a tiny, priceless amount of jasmine absolute from grass, a scent he intended to use as a hidden bridge between the harshness of the turpentine and the warmth of the coffee. It is beautiful, Master, I said, inhaling the rich, floral aroma. He paused, looking at the single drop of jasmine oil on the glass rod. Yes, he said quietly, his eyes meeting mine. But do you know how it is made? To capture this single drop of its true essence, they must gather thousands of blossoms only at night, when their scent is most potent. And then they must crush them, utterly. True beauty, my apprentice, the kind that lasts. It is almost always born from a little bit of pain. I looked at him, and I understood he was no longer talking about the flower. He was talking about Genevieve. He was talking about her life, her sadness, and the beautiful soul that had endured despite it all. I felt a profound sense of reverence for what he was doing. He was not just making a perfume. He was honoring a life. The final heart scent was complete. I dipped a new paper blotter. This scent was strange, unconventional. It did not smell like a perfume. It smelled like a place. It smelled like a memory. It was the scent of a dusty, sunlit studio with its windows open to the sea. It was melancholic, complex, and so achingly beautiful, it made my heart hurt. I watched, confused, as Master Antoine then prepared the final, ornate crystal bottle. He had 2 beakers before him, the cold, brilliant shell perfume for the husband, and the warm, secret heart perfume for the wife. How could they both exist in one bottle? He saw the question in my eyes. He smiled, a small, conspiratorial smile. Now, he said, for the final act of alchemy. He explained to me the science of volatility, of top notes, heart notes, and base notes. Mr. Harrington, he said, is a man who appreciates only the first impression, the loud, brilliant opening notes, so we shall give him what he wants. He carefully decanted the shell perfume into the bottle. The aldehydes, the white florals, they are made of small, volatile molecules. They will be the first thing one smells. Bright, powerful, unmistakable. They will announce her arrival, and then, within the hour, they will vanish. He then picked up the second beaker. But this, he said, his voice full of reverence, the heart, this is made of resins, of woods, of absolutes. The molecules are large, heavy. They cling to the skin. They do not shout. They whisper. And they will continue to whisper for the rest of the night, long after the top notes have faded into silence. He poured the heart perfume into the same bottle, the 2 liquids merging into one. I looked at the beautiful, innocent-looking crystal bottle, now filled with its complex, duplicitous creation. It was a masterpiece of deception, a perfume that kept a secret, a scent that would smell of power and status to her husband and to the world. But on her own skin, hours later, in the quiet of the night, it would whisper to her of another life. It would smell of turpentine and sea salt, and a love that was hers and hers alone. It was a secret garden, bottled, a quiet rebellion, worn on the pulse points. The day of the presentation arrived. It was a bright, clear day in Newport, the kind of day where the sunlight on the ocean is so brilliant it hurts the eyes. The air was crisp and clean with salt. We were summoned once again to the dark, imposing study of Mr. Alistair Harrington. The finished perfume sat on the center of his massive mahogany desk. It was housed in an exquisite crystal bottle we had commissioned from Baccarat with a simple, elegant gold stopper. It looked like an object of immense value, which, of course, it was. It looked pure, simple, and impossibly expensive. It looked like a perfect lie. Mr. Harrington, dressed in a sharp suit, sat behind his desk. Genevieve stood near the window, looking out at the sea, a silent, beautiful statue in a pale blue dress. She looked, I thought, like a figurehead on a ship, staring into a vast, lonely horizon. "So," Mr. Harrington began, his voice booming in the quiet room, "the masterpiece is complete." "It is," Master Antoine replied calmly. He did not seem intimidated by the man or by the grandeur of the room. He was an artist, and in this moment, the art was his domain. Mr. Harrington picked up the heavy crystal bottle, admiring it as he would a racehorse or a stock certificate. "It certainly looks the part," he said with a nod of approval. "Let us see if it lives up to the promise." My master took a clean, white paper blotter, removed the golden stopper, and with a practiced, steady hand, applied a single, tiny drop of the perfume to the paper. He waved it in the air for a moment to let the alcohol evaporate, and then handed it to Mr. Harrington. Mr. Harrington took the blotter and brought it to his nose. He inhaled deeply. I watched his face, my own heart pounding softly. I could smell it even from where I stood. It was the shell scent. The bright, sharp, almost aggressive sparkle of the aldehydes, followed by the cold, regal wave of white florals, the tuberose and the iris. It was the scent of power. A slow, satisfied smile spread across Mr. Harrington's face. "Extraordinary," he declared. "Absolutely extraordinary. It smells expensive. It smells of class. It is exactly what I wanted. You have done well, de la Vigne." He seemed genuinely pleased. He had gotten the beautiful, exclusive ornament he had paid for. He then turned to his wife. "Genevieve, my dear, come and smell the scent of your new self." She turned from the window, her face a polite, unreadable mask. She walked over to the desk and took the paper blotter from her husband's hand. She raised it to her nose. I watched her closely. I saw her inhale, and for a fraction of a second, I saw a flicker of disappointment in her deep blue eyes. It was a look of resignation, this beautiful, cold, powerful scent. It was not hers. It was just another part of the gilded cage he had built for her. She handed the blotter back with a quiet, "It is lovely, Alistair." But my master was not finished. "A perfume only truly lives on the skin," he said, his voice soft but clear. "The warmth of the pulse points is the final ingredient, the one that awakens the scent's true soul. If I may, Mrs. Harrington." He stepped forward, holding the crystal bottle. Genevieve, looking slightly surprised, extended her delicate, gloved wrist. He gently removed her glove, and then, with the stopper, he applied a single, tiny drop of the perfume to her pulse point. It was an act of immense intimacy, performed in plain sight. For a moment, the room was silent save for the ticking of the great clock in the hall. She raised her wrist to her nose and inhaled. She smelled the same bright floral notes as before. She gave a small, polite nod. The performance was complete. As we were preparing to leave, after the final pleasantries and the exchange of a very heavy bank draft, my master did one last thing. While Mr. Harrington was turned away, looking at his new acquisition on the desk, Master Antoine discreetly drew a small, plain vial from his pocket. It was a private sample. He pressed it into Genevieve's hand. "Be patient with it, madam," he murmured, his voice so low it was almost a whisper, meant only for her. "It takes a little time to hear the true story." Her eyes shot up to meet his, and in that single shared glance, a universe of understanding passed between them. I saw the dawning realization in her eyes, a flicker of hope, of disbelief. I saw a single tear well up, which she quickly blinked away before her husband could see. She gave my master a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. It was a nod of profound, life-altering gratitude. A secret had been successfully passed. We left the manor in the same grand carriage, the salty sea air feeling cleaner and more real than the perfumed air of the house. My master was silent for the entire journey back to the station, his eyes closed, a peaceful, weary look on his face. His work was done. He had not just created a perfume, he had delivered a message. He had armed a quiet soul with a secret shield of memory. Now, on the long train ride back to New York, the rhythmic clack-clack of the wheels on the track is a comforting, meditative sound. The opulence of Newport fades behind us like a strange dream. I take out a small paper blotter from my own pocket, one that I had secretly dipped in the second beaker, in the heart perfume. I lift it to my nose, and it is all there. The sharp, hopeful scent of turpentine, the wild, free scent of the salt sea breeze, the warm, bitter comfort of black coffee. It is the scent of a lost love, of a life that might have been. It is a sad scent, but it is also a beautiful one. It is the scent of truth. I look at my master, who seems to be sleeping in the seat across from me. I realize that our craft, the art of perfumery, is a strange and powerful form of alchemy. We do not turn lead into gold. We do something far more miraculous. We take intangible things, a memory, a feeling, a secret, and we turn them into something real, something that can be worn on the skin, something that can comfort a person in their loneliest hours. I close my eyes, the paper blotter still held to my nose. The rocking of the train is a gentle cradle. The scent in my senses is a quiet story, a story of a painter's studio by the sea. My thoughts begin to slow, to soften, to drift away on a cloud of turpentine and salt air, a memory that is not my own, but one I will now carry forever, a quiet story, a secret scent, a gentle, peaceful sleep. The most powerful secrets are not the ones we keep from others, but the ones we keep for ourselves. A hidden memory, a secret scent, a quiet rebellion worn on the skin. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of a perfumer's laboratory. I hope this story has soothed your spirit and brought you peace. May your night be calm and your dreams be filled with your own most beautiful, treasured scents. Sleep well. They say that of all the senses, scent is the most powerful time machine. A single, forgotten fragrance can unlatch doors in the mind that have been sealed for decades. transporting you back to a room, a moment, a person you thought you had left behind. For me, that is certainly true. My life, especially the part of it that truly mattered, can be told in the story of two very different perfumes. I am an old woman now. I live in a quiet apartment where the windows look out over the peaceful green of a city park. My world is one of order, of quiet afternoons with a book and a cup of tea. It is a respectable life, a calm life. But sometimes, in the quiet of the evening, I will open a small, lacquered box that sits on my dressing table. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded, yellowed silk, lies a single, empty perfume bottle. It is a beautiful thing, a relic from another era, a small crystal flask in the Art Deco style, with sharp, geometric lines and a tarnished silver stopper. It is nothing like the simple, elegant bottles they make today. This one has a history. It has a secret. I pick it up. The glass is cool and heavy in my hand. I remove the stopper, and though it has been empty for more than 60 years, I bring it to my nose. And if I close my eyes and concentrate, I can almost smell the ghost of the scent it once held. It is not a polite scent. It is a bold, intoxicating perfume. The overwhelming, creamy, almost narcotic scent of white gardenias in full bloom on a hot, humid summer night. It is the scent of jazz music, of cigarette smoke, of whispered secrets in a crowded room. It is the scent of danger. It is the scent of a girl I used to be, a girl named Ely. You see, I did not begin my life as Eli. I began as Evelyn. My memory unspools, and I am a young woman again, back in the cavernous, silent house of my parents in the year 1925. To be Evelyn was to live a life of quiet, suffocating propriety. Our house was a temple to tradition. The furniture was heavy and dark. The curtains were thick velvet that blocked out the sun, and the air was always still, smelling of beeswax, old paper, and unspoken expectations. Dinners were silent affairs, the only sound the gentle clinking of silver against porcelain. My father, a stern banker, would read the financial pages. My mother would ensure my posture was perfect. My future was a topic of quiet, constant discussion. A suitable marriage to a suitable young man from a suitable family. My life was a path that had been neatly paved for me before I was even born. The perfume of that life, the scent of Evelyn, was rosewater. It was chosen by my mother. It came in a simple, clear bottle with a pale pink label. It was a clean, polite, and thoroughly innocent scent. It was the scent of a good daughter, a scent that apologized for taking up space. I would dab it on my wrists each morning, and the faint, watery floral would be a constant reminder of who I was supposed to be. It was not a perfume. It was a uniform. But when the sun went down and the great house settled into its deep, respectable sleep, another life would begin. My room was my sanctuary, my dressing room for a different kind of performance. I would lock the door. The sound of the key turning in the lock was the first note of a secret symphony. I would shed the skin of Evelyn, taking off the modest, high-collared day dress, and from the very back of my wardrobe, from a hidden compartment beneath a false floorboard, I would retrieve the costume for my other self, a dress of shimmering black beads that ended daringly above the knee, silk stockings, a beaded headband with a single, defiant feather. As I put them on, my very posture would change. Evelyn's polite slump would disappear, replaced by Ely's straight-backed, confident poise. I would look at my reflection in the mirror, and a stranger would look back. A stranger with brighter eyes and a bolder smile. And then came the final, most important part of the ritual, the anointing. From that same secret compartment, I would take out the crystal bottle, the gardenia perfume. It was my greatest treasure, purchased with saved-up allowance money from a small, back-alley shop that always smelled of foreign spices and mystery. I would remove the silver stopper, and the scent would fill my small room, instantly banishing the polite ghost of rosewater. It was a loud, intoxicating, almost overwhelming fragrance. The scent of the night itself, creamy, sweet, with a dark, musky undertone. It was not a perfume for a respectable young lady. It was a perfume for a woman who was not afraid of the dark. I would dab a single drop onto my pulse points, the wrist, the neck, behind the ear. And with that final act, the transformation was complete. I was no longer Evelyn, the banker's daughter. I was Ely, and Ely was going out. The ritual of transformation was complete. I was no longer Evelyn, the banker's daughter, smelling of polite, apologetic roses. I was Ely, a creature of the night, cloaked in the bold, defiant scent of gardenias. And my world was waiting for me. My escape was a practiced art, not through the grand, creaking front door, but through the large sash window of my bedroom. It overlooked a sturdy trellis, thick with ivy, that my father had installed for climbing roses years ago. He never imagined his own daughter would use it for a different kind of climbing. The night air was a shock after the stuffy stillness of the house. It was cool and alive, carrying the distant sounds of the city, the rumble of a far-off train, the lonely wail of a ship's horn from the harbor, the faint, electric hum of a world that never truly slept. I moved silently, my beaded dress making a soft, whispering sound, a secret language of its own. My descent down the trellis was quick and silent, my feet finding their familiar holds. Once on the soft grass of the garden, I was a ghost, slipping through the shadows of the manicured hedges and out the small service gate at the back of the property. The streets of my neighborhood were quiet, respectable avenues lined with great, dark houses where good families were dreaming their good, respectable dreams. But as I walked further downtown, the city began to change. The silence gave way to noise. The polite gas lamps gave way to the sharp, aggressive glare of electric signs. The air no longer smelled of cut grass, but of exhaust fumes, roasted chestnuts from a street vendor's cart, and the general, gritty perfume of humanity. My destination was an unmarked door in a narrow, cobbled alley behind a row of closed butcher shops. It was a place you would never find unless you already knew it was there. There was no sign, no light, just a heavy, dark green door with a small, sliding peephole. I gave the secret knock. 3 quick taps, a pause, then 2 more. Tap, 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 tap. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a small metal slide scraped open, and a pair of suspicious eyes peered out, sizing me up. I stood there, my heart a steady, excited rhythm. He recognized me. The heavy bolts on the inside of the door slid back with a series of satisfying, metallic clunks. The door opened just enough for me to slip inside, and the world exploded. The transition was immediate, a physical shock to the senses. From the cold, quiet alley, I stepped into a wall of heat, noise, and life. The air was thick and hazy with cigarette smoke, so dense it caught the dim, low-hanging lights in golden beams. The sound was a joyful, chaotic symphony, the roar of 100 conversations, the sharp, percussive sound of a cocktail shaker, the clinking of glasses, and above it all, the driving, infectious rhythm of a live jazz band. This was the Gilded Cage, the most popular speakeasy in town. It was an illegal, underground haven of glorious, unapologetic life. I saw women with short, bobbed hair and shimmering dresses dancing the Charleston with an energy that would have given my mother a heart attack. I saw men in sharp suits laughing loudly, their faces flushed, glasses of forbidden gin in their hands. This was not a world of rules and expectations. This was a world of pure, exhilarating presence. I did not join the fray. That was not Eli's way. Ely was an observer. My usual table, a small, round one in a dark, secluded corner, was waiting for me, as it always was. From here, I could see everything without being truly seen. I was a part of the vibrant chaos, yet separate from it. A quiet island in a roaring sea. I ordered a gin fizz, the forbidden drink tasting like freedom on my tongue. And I watched the band. They were magnificent, a whirlwind of brass and rhythm. But my eyes, as always, were drawn to the man at the piano. His name, I had learned from the bartender, was Julian. He played with a kind of joyful, reckless abandon. His fingers didn't just play the keys. They danced, they attacked, they caressed. His music was the heartbeat of the room. It was complex, energetic, a little bit dangerous. And beneath all the joy, there was a current of a deep, beautiful melancholy. His music was like the city itself, like the scent of my gardenia perfume. It was a beautiful, complicated lie. The band finished their set to a roar of applause. Julian stood up, gave a small, weary bow, and wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. He made his way through the crowd to the bar. He ordered a drink, and as he took his first sip, his eyes began to scan the room. They moved over the dancing couples, over the loud groups at the larger tables, and then they found me, sitting alone in my dark corner. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second across the smoky room. I expected him to look away, to dismiss me, but he didn't. A small, curious smile touched his lips. He picked up his drink and began to walk towards my table. My heart, which had been beating with the rhythm of his music, now began to beat with a rhythm all its own. He stood before my table, a tall, lean figure in a slightly rumpled suit. "This is the quietest corner in the loudest room in the city," he said, his voice a low, smooth baritone, softer than I expected. "It's a strange place to choose to sit alone." I took a sip of my drink, trying to match his cool composure. "Perhaps I'm not hiding," I replied, my voice steady. "Perhaps I'm observing." He raised an eyebrow. intrigued. He gestured to the empty chair across from me. "May I?" I nodded. He sat down, placing his drink on the table. He looked at me, his gaze direct and intelligent. "An observer," he mused. "And what does an observer see tonight?" "I see a lot of people trying very hard to be happy," I said. "And I see a man who plays the piano as if it's the only honest thing in this whole city." His smile widened. It was a real smile this time, one that reached his tired eyes. "And your perfume," he said, leaning in just slightly. "It's not an honest scent. It's too bold, too beautiful. It has a secret." I was taken aback. No one had ever spoken of a scent that way. "All beautiful things have secrets," I said. "And what's yours, Eli?" he asked, his voice a low murmur. The name, my secret name, on his lips sent a shiver through me. "If I told you," I said, a smile playing on my own lips, "it wouldn't be a secret anymore, would it?" The band began to stir, the trumpet player letting out a long, lazy note. Julian sighed and drained his glass. "Duty calls," he said, standing up. "But don't be a stranger in your quiet corner." He gave me one last, lingering look. "Stick around, Eli. I'll play the next one just for you." He walked back to the piano, and I was left alone at my table, my heart pounding, the air around me thick with the scent of gardenias and the promise of the music to come. The quiet observer, I realized, was about to become part of the story. The gilded cage became my secret world, my true home. Night after night, I would make my silent escape, leaving the respectable ghost of Evelyn sleeping in her bed, while Illy, alive and breathing, descended into the vibrant, beating heart of the city. I returned for the music, for the thrilling, forbidden atmosphere, but most of all, I returned for him, for Julian. Our relationship unfolded in a language of its own, a language of music and silence. I would arrive and take my small table in the corner, a silent observer. He would be at his piano, lost in his work. But then he would feel my presence, or perhaps he would catch the scent of my gardenia perfume on the air. He would look up, and his eyes would find mine across the smoky room. A slow, secret smile would be his hello. And then the music would change. The tune he was playing would shift, soften, taking on a more melancholic, more intimate tone. It was a song only I could hear. It was his way of saying, "I see you. I'm glad you're here." Our entire conversation would begin long before he ever left his piano bench. He played my moods. On nights I felt bold and joyful, he would launch into a wild, energetic ragtime that made my feet tap under the table. On nights I felt weary from the endless charade of my daytime life, he would play a slow, soulful blues, a sound that understood my unspoken sadness. His music was the only place I felt truly seen. One night, the energy in the room was electric. The air was thick with the heat of too many bodies dancing, with the sweet, sharp smell of gin and the dark perfume of rebellion. The band was playing a frantic, joyful Charleston, a rhythm that demanded you move. During their break, Julian came to my table as he always did, but this time, he did not sit down. He simply stood before me, a silent question in his dark, intense eyes. He extended a hand. I placed my hand in his without hesitation. He led me onto the small, crowded dance floor. The band kicked back in, and the world exploded into motion. We danced. It was not the polite, structured waltz of my parents' world. It was a dance of pure, unadulterated joy, of freedom. My beaded dress shimmered. My feet moved faster than I thought they could. He spun me around, and I threw my head back and laughed. For those few minutes, I was not Evelyn, the banker's daughter. I was not even Ely, the quiet observer. I was just alive, a part of the music, a part of the night. The frantic song ended, leaving us breathless and laughing in the center of the floor. The applause was deafening, but then, as the applause died down, a new sound emerged. At a nod from Julian, the saxophone player began to play a new melody. It was slow, it was smoky, a bluesy ballad full of longing and late-night confessions. The lights in the room seemed to dim further. The loud chatter softened to a low murmur. Julian pulled me closer. The distance between us collapsed. His hand, warm and firm, rested on the small of my back. My own hand rested on his shoulder, and I could feel the strength there. We began to move, but it was barely a dance. It was a slow, gentle sway, our bodies moving as one, an island of stillness in the gently swaying room. This was a different kind of intimacy. The air between us was charged. I leaned my head against his shoulder, and I closed my eyes. The world was reduced to sensation. The feeling of the rough fabric of his suit jacket against my cheek. The sound of the mournful saxophone weaving a story of heartbreak and hope, and the scent, the bold, creamy scent of my gardenia perfume, mingling with the sharp, clean scent of gin and smoke that clung to him. It created a third scent, a new scent that belonged only to us, only to this moment. "Where do you go when you disappear from here, Ely?" he whispered, his lips so close to my ear that his breath was a warm touch. "To another world," I whispered back. "A much quieter, much sadder world." "Tell me about it," he said. And so I did. Not the details of my family or my name, but the feelings. I told him about the silence of my home, about the weight of expectations, about the feeling of wearing a mask all day. And he, in turn, told me of his own dreams. He spoke of Paris, of a place where jazz wasn't just nightclub music, but an art form. He spoke of wanting to compose, not just play. In that dim, smoky, illegal room, surrounded by strangers, we shared our truest selves. We were two people living double lives, and for the first time, we were showing our real faces to someone else. It was in that moment, as we held each other, swaying to the music, that a new sound cut through the air. A sharp, piercing sound from the alley outside, a police whistle. The change was instantaneous. The music stopped mid-note. A collective gasp went through the room. The lights flickered and died, plunging us into near total darkness, save for the faint glow from the bar. A wave of panic rippled through the crowd. I felt Julian's arm tighten around me, a protective, grounding gesture. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic rhythm of pure fear. This was the reality of our secret world. The danger was always just outside the door. We stood frozen in the dark, listening. We heard shouting in the distance, but it faded. After a minute that felt like an eternity, a lookout by the door gave a low whistle, the all clear. A collective sigh of relief washed over the room. The lights came back on, dim as before, and the band, after a shaky moment, slowly, defiantly, started to play again. The moment of danger had passed, but it had left its mark. The thrill of the forbidden was now laced with the very real taste of fear. Julian looked down at me, his face serious in the dim light. He held me a little tighter, a gesture that said, "I will keep you safe." We finished our dance in a new kind of silence. The easy intimacy from before was now deeper, forged in a moment of shared danger. He walked me back to my table. Before he turned to go back to his piano, he gently touched my cheek with his fingertips. A fleeting, tender touch. "Be careful going home, Ellie," he murmured. I sat alone in my corner for the rest of the night, but I was no longer just an observer. I was a participant. My heart was pounding, not with fear anymore, but with a wild, exhilarating sense of being alive. I had found my own secret world, my own music, my own partner in rebellion, and I knew, with a certainty that both thrilled and terrified me, that I would be back. The seasons of my secret life turned. Summer bled into a crisp, golden autumn. My nightly escapes to the gilded cage became the anchor of my existence, the only time I felt truly myself. Our love, Julian's and mine, flourished in that smoky, subterranean world. It was a love made of shared glances across a crowded room, of hands brushing in the dark, of music that spoke the words we could not. It was perfect. It was a secret, and like all secrets, it was not destined to last. The end came not with a bang, but with a quiet, polite conversation in the suffocating stillness of my parents' parlor. The room smelled of lemon polish and old money. My mother and father sat opposite me, their faces composed in masks of parental satisfaction. They had, they announced, secured a most advantageous match for me. A young man from a family of impeccable standing. He was a banker, like my father. He was respectable. He was stable. He was everything Julian was not. He was everything Evelyn was supposed to want. I sat there, in my polite rosewater scent, and I nodded and smiled. I felt the walls of the room, of my life, closing in. My two worlds, once so carefully separated, were now on a collision course. And I knew, with a certainty that felt like a cold stone in my stomach, that I would have to choose. That night, I made my final journey to the gilded cage. The walk through the city felt different. The vibrant, exciting energy of the streets now felt frantic and lonely. The secret door in the alley seemed less like a gateway to freedom and more like the entrance to a beautiful, fading dream. Inside, the music was loud, the laughter was bright, but for me, a veil of sadness had fallen over everything. I found Julian at the piano. He saw me and his brilliant smile faltered, just for a second. He saw the truth in my eyes before I had even spoken a word. He finished his set and came to my corner table. "Ellie," he said, his voice low. "What is it?" I told him everything. The respectable young banker, the expectations of my family, the life that was waiting for me, the life I could not escape. I told him that Evelyn had to win, that Ely had to disappear. He did not argue. He did not plead. He was a man who understood the harsh melodies of the world. He just sat there in silence for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the glass of gin in his hand. Then he stood up. "One last dance?" he asked, his voice rough with an emotion he was trying to hide. He led me to the floor, and as if on cue, the band began to play our song, the slow, smoky, bluesy ballad. He pulled me close, closer than ever before. We danced, but it was not the easy, intimate sway of the past. It was a dance of farewell, a desperate, silent attempt to memorize the feel of each other, the warmth, the scent. I buried my face in his shoulder, breathing in the smell of gin and smoke and his own unique, personal scent for the last time. "So, this is it," he whispered into my hair. "The pretty bird flies back to her gilded cage." "I have no wings, Julian," I whispered back, my voice breaking. "I never did." "Yes, you do," he said, holding me tighter. "I've seen them. I've heard them in your laughter." He pulled back just enough to look at me, his dark eyes full of a profound sadness. "No matter where I go, Evelyn Elie, every time I smell gardenias, I will be right back here, in this room, dancing with you." And that was our goodbye. He walked me back to my table, raised my hand to his lips for a single, gentle kiss, and then turned and walked back to his piano without looking back. I left the gilded cage for the last time. I walked through the sleeping city, the sound of my own footsteps echoing on the empty pavement. I found myself on a bridge overlooking the dark, silent river. The city lights glittered on the black water like a carpet of fallen stars. I reached into my small purse and took out the crystal bottle, the speakeasy gardenia, my secret self, my courage, my forbidden love, all contained in this small, beautiful flask. I held it for a long moment, the glass cool against my palm. Then, with a final, quiet breath, I opened my hand and let it go. I watched it fall, a single, glittering tear in the darkness. It hit the water with a soft, almost inaudible plink, and then it was gone, disappeared into the dark, secret heart of the river. Ellie was gone with it. I sit here now, in my quiet, sunlit apartment, and I hold another bottle. It looks just like the one I let go of all those years ago. I found it in a dusty antique shop decades later. It is empty, of course, but it is not a symbol of loss. It is a symbol of a life I chose. I chose the life of Evelyn, a good life, a safe life. I married, I had children. I have been, by all accounts, content. But sometimes, on quiet nights like this, I open this empty bottle, and I remember the thrill of the secret knock, the roar of the jazz band, the taste of forbidden gin, and the feeling of being held in the arms of a man who played the piano as if it was the only honest thing in the world. I do not regret the path I chose, but I am eternally grateful for the path that chose me, if only for a brief, brilliant summer. Illy did not die that night. She simply went to sleep, and she lives on here, in my memory. She gave me the courage to endure the long, quiet years, because she reminded me that I had once truly been gloriously alive. I close my eyes now. The sounds of the modern city outside fade away, and in my mind, I can hear it. A faint, distant melody from a smoky, underground room. A piano playing a sad, beautiful blues. And I can almost smell the intoxicating, impossible scent of gardenias in the dark, a secret, a memory, a gentle, peaceful sleep. Every life holds a secret room, a hidden self that dances to a different rhythm. And the memory of that music can be a lullaby for a lifetime. Thank you for listening to this story of 2 cents and 1 life. I hope it has brought you a sense of peace and a quiet moment of reflection. May your rest be deep and your dreams be filled with your own most beautiful, secret melodies. Sleep well.